Hello, hello. Welcome to our pre-class chat. Thank you everyone for joining me. I apologize for the loud noises outside. We live right next to a fire station. Actually, let me see if I can close this window, because I don't know what they're doing. They're probably doing some sort of practice and it's just really loud. So give me a second. There we go. Maybe that's a little better. I can't shut the other window because we have our air conditioning in that window, but at least maybe it's a little bit less. Let me know if that's better. But yeah, welcome. Let me know if this is your first time here. I always love hearing if this is your first time, or if like you've never painted before. That's always really fun. But let me know where you're from, or who you're painting with. That's always a fun thing. Yeah. Let me know in the comments below. I can answer any questions you may have about me, about what we're painting, about any specific supplies you have. And we're just gonna get ready to paint together and have fun while we're doing it. Where do I put this? It feels like forever since I've painted, but I literally painted 2 nights ago. So, not like a live class, but actually, I can show you. I'll probably show this again. During the actual live class, but I painted this, and it's gonna be for one of our live classes. I think it'll be the second one in April. So it's a palette knife painting balloon house. So that one will be a lot of fun. If you don't follow me on Facebook or Instagram, that is where I will post new events, and you'll get kind of the first look of what we're going to be painting. So make sure to like the Facebook page and follow me on Instagram if you're a Instagrammer. I don't know. And then I also have, if you are on Facebook, I do have a artist community, which anyone can join. It's a public group, but that is where we're going to be posting all of our classes, or all of our paintings after the classes. Every class that I do, that's where we post it. So make sure to say hi in the comments. Let me know if you're here, if you're watching, and yeah. And then for anyone else who wants to teach or learn other things, I do have a Patreon where I teach more exclusive classes for my patrons. So I think I have about 23 or 24 patrons now, and they get to choose what we paint. So it's a lot of fun. I get a little bit more in detail with some of my classes, and they get to be a little bit more detailed themselves. So for instance, let's see, what did we just paint? We just painted this one. Last week, this is what we painted. So we painted some really pretty dolphins. This is literally, I mean, I probably told my husband this multiple times, that it's one of my favorites that I've painted like ever. And maybe because it's a mom and baby, maybe I'm just being sentimental because I have kids, but I thought it was a lot of fun and really cute. And then I do have a traceable for that. So if you would like to become a patron and learn more classes from me, because my live classes right now, they only come every other week. So that's kind of, and then the off week on Fridays, I put out a tutorial that's specific for my patrons. So if you ever want to learn more, and there's other stuff that you can, there's like postcards I give out, and let's see what else. I do quick tips. and other polls and things like that. But yeah, Patron's fun. If anyone has any questions, I know I have like 15, 16 people here. If you have any questions, make sure to let me know who's painting with you. For sure. I've had people paint with, like do like a Facebook like video messenger with like friends and things like that, and they got to paint together, and that's always a lot of fun. But yeah, I just got really thirsty. I'm gonna water. If you have a preference, let me know what kind of canvas you are teaching off, or what you're painting off of. So I typically like to, like, my favorite is probably stretched canvas, which is like, it's got like a, you know, a frame around it. That's what I prefer, and then I can just hang it right on the wall. But my goodness, does it take up a lot of space. So it takes up a lot of space when they're not on the wall. And I have a lot of paintings. So I tend to want to not do it on, you know, I have a couple panels like right here, like the dog and the penguin. Those are on panels, so they don't take up as much space, but whenever I'm not painting for like a live class or something specific, I'll just paint on canvas pad, which is super thin. It's actually what I showed you here. I'll have a wrapped canvas that I can just unwrap, so I will tape the sides of my, you know, whatever painting I'm doing, and then if I wanted to use this canvas later, I would just unwrap it. So that's like great. So it still gives me like the hardness of a canvas without actually having to have the thickness of a canvas. So that's nice. But let's see. Belinda commented and said, Dawn and I are here at my table watching and painting. Well, welcome. Yeah, it's always fun to do it with friends. I think that's the thing I miss most about pre-COVID, was just being able to do stuff in person. I mean, everybody wants that. Being able to do stuff with friends or even family. But definitely look forward to doing more in-person paint nights in the future. But soon and very soon. Our first painting, first ever, like you've never painted before. And if I'm looking down here, it's because that's where the comments are. First painting, like ever? Have you ever done anything, like any drawing or any, I don't know, any other type of art? Yeah? Okay. Yes, for first painting. That's fun. So you're both first painting. That'll be fun. This one should be fairly beginner friendly. There's not a lot of colors involved. And there's some really easy ways I'm going to show you in order to get like the petal shapes and things like that. Most of them are just like a couple strokes. So I'm hoping that it'll be fairly easy for anyone who, like, even for someone who has never painted before. So I'm hoping that will, it'll just be pretty easy for everyone. Do lots of crafts. What kind of crafts? I love crafts. Man, if I was not married and I like lived by myself, I'd probably be like the crazy craft lady, because like I would make all my own cards, and I'd probably have a scrapbook. Although, how do you have a scrapbook with like no family to put your pictures in? Maybe I would just make scrapbooks for other people. But now I have like little kids and I can't have like paper and crafts everywhere. Oh gosh. That's funny. Yeah. Hi, Micah. Good to have you. Sewing, stamping, scrapbooking, diamond art. Oh, is that like you order something and it's like a certain, and you like put the little like half diamonds on it? Always wanted to try one of those. Knit, crochet, quilt, cake decorate. Cake decorating. Okay. That's like a secret, not hobby, because I don't do it enough to be a hobby, but that's like a secret thing that I love doing. I think it mainly stems from just being artsy in general, but I used to do henna back when pre-COVID, I was a face painter. I did balloons and henna and all glitter tattoos and all this stuff, which means I have a lot of glitter that I love using for crafts. Anyways, but I think because like cookie decorating and cake decorating, I just love being able to create something like that. I want to cake decorate. So whenever we have like a party or anything like for my kids, I'm just like, I get to do the cake. I used to knit and I never learned how to crochet. I tried to crochet once, but it was so confusing. They say if you learn knitting or crocheting first, like the other one is hard to learn unless you learn them like the same time. I've been trying colored pencils and don't like it that much. Are you, Micah, are you mainly a drawer and painter? I remember going onto your YouTube at one point, but I don't remember. Oil or acrylic paints? I prefer acrylic. That's also mainly just because I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. Markers, that's right, okay. I prefer acrylics just because oils, you need to be in a well-vented area, and I just don't have that space. Also, I have young kids, so having a open, wet painting around for a long time, it's just not for me. As well as I really do like having acrylics being able to dry and layer, especially in a 2-hour class. It works for me and what I'm doing, but if you have the right space and the right materials and you want to give oils a go, I would highly recommend it. I've never actually tried, I don't think I've ever tried oils, just because I don't think I've ever been in a position or space to do it. I grew up on acrylic, so it's just always been my preference, but whenever somebody asks me oils or acrylics, I really think it's just preference. I think if you're doing like larger paintings, like really big paintings, I think oil, everybody who I can think of who does large paintings, I forget his name, but his name is Kevin something. He's on YouTube. There's Kevin, there's Bob Ross. I'm pretty sure Thomas Kincaid also did oil. Like all of the people that I can think of who did larger paintings did oil, not acrylic. So my thought is that if you're doing a bigger painting, that you'll need to come back to it over and over. You'll probably, I would suggest doing oils, or at least exploring oils, because acrylics do dry fairly quickly, but that's also something that I'm used to, so I know how to work with it. Hi Tanya. Micah, who is your favorite artist, YouTube artist, or just regular artist? I really like Thomas Kincaid, but he like inspires me, but not inspires me in a way that I want to replicate anything that he's done. I just really enjoy looking at his pieces. I don't have any of his pieces, but I remember going into an art gallery when I was little. One of our local malls had like a little art gallery of Thomas Kincaid, and all the lighting was like low and dim, and they were all like, and that was just a really cool experience. So I think that's more of like a sentimental. I love Thomas Kincaid, and then I've always been inspired by Bob Ross. Even though he's oil, I've always done Please do captions on. I believe you have control over that. I don't have control over, I don't have control over your subtitles. I don't know, let me see. Do you have the option to do, do you have the option to do subtitles? Because if not, I might have to. Chat, wait, I don't think I have. You should be able to, it's turned off. Okay, I don't know. Give me 1 second. Language subtitles and closed captions. Select video. It doesn't have an option for me to turn it on or off. Let me see if that works. Going back to my favorite artist. Actually, let me look him up because I really do. He reminds me of a Bob Ross type of personality. So maybe that's why I'm drawn to him, because I do like Bob Ross. But I feel like who doesn't like Bob Ross? Kevin Hill, that's his name. So if you like Bob Ross and you want someone more current, I would suggest looking up Kevin Hill. He's really sweet. He's very, I don't know, like I said, Bob Ross-esque. Soft voice and stuff like that. But I like Jean Michael Basquiat. I'll have to look him up. I haven't heard that one. Happy Accidents, yep. Or like when he talks about how like trees need friends, or like a bush needs this friend. It's like, oh, there's a tree. Like, or Mighty Mountains or anything like that. Just his wording is fun. Bob Ross, anyhow. Trying to think of other artists. I haven't done a whole lot of research on artists like for nowadays. It's just the him using palette knife is just so satisfying for some reason. Yes, I love using. I think that's probably primarily where I got my my techniques for using palette knives on Mountain specifically. I would always watch his videos. But ironically, I don't think I've ever actually painted like a tutorial from him though. Maybe that's because he's oil and I've never like tried that like cross, because I think I would need to do it differently because I'm using acrylics and I can't go back to certain things. What brushes will we use? We will be using, if you have a large filbert, it is probably going to be one of the key points for making your flowers in the way that we're going to be making it. So I have the kit that I post. I always post this kit because it's what I use. It's not that expensive, and I want to be able to use the same materials that that you guys use. So for anyone that doesn't have really brushes, you can buy this kit. It's an affiliate link. It's in the description. But I've been using it for the last, I would say almost the last year. Probably at least 6 to 8 months. And they've held up. So I will be using a filbert brush, and then like a large filbert brush for most of the sky, or like all of the sky, the clouds, and also the main shape of the petals for the flowers. And then other brushes I will use will probably be a large round, or maybe like a medium-sized round. Probably one of these. They're relatively the same. I'm not sure which one I'll do. But What brand of paint do I use? For paint, I mainly use Hobby Lobby brand. It's just the student, I believe it's the student grade. Student grade, it's just Master's Touch. It's what I have locally. I would say, as long as it's in the tube and it's not like the super cheap option, you should be fine. Just use what you have. If you have the bottled stuff, so this is full body acrylics. It comes in the tubes. If you have medium or what's the word? I forget what it's called, but it's not full body. It's the opposite. It's it is like the flow stuff. Sometimes you have to do a couple coats. But the good thing about this painting that we're doing is the consistency of the pink that we're doing is going to be on the waterier side because we want it, we're going to be doing in layers, so we want it to be a little bit more fluid and see-through a little bit, so don't worry if you don't have like the full body acrylics for this one. For palette knife paintings, definitely you should have the palette, or you should have the full body acrylics, but if not, then that's fine. Let's see, hello from Lexed. Hello Janet. Hello. What if I don't have a large filbert? Could you show using a different brush? If you have like a medium filbert, that would also work. It's just gonna be, you'll have to do it in a couple more strokes. I'll show you when we get there what I'm gonna be doing, and then I'll try to give a few options for if you don't have a large filbert, if that will help. Watching from Sudbury, Ontario. Is that Canada, right? There's like an Ontario in Canada, and there's also Ontario in like LA area, so sometimes I never know. My mom loved pink tulips, so this will be special class for me. Aww. Thank you, I do have a medium. Yeah, a medium should work fine. Like I have this one that I use it for everything. And I did not clean this very well last time. So this is what happens when you don't clean it very well. You could see that like it's not bending here near the furrow, it's bending like in the middle because there's still paint kind of stuck up in here. It should be fine once I get it wet because it doesn't look like there's too much in there, but make sure you clean your brush as well, or else you slowly won't be able to use them. But yeah, you can use a smaller filbert. You just might have to do it in a couple more strokes rather than just like kind of the one stroke that we're doing. I am Finger Lakes region of New York. Oh, West New York. Okay, cool. I like Michael's Arts and Craft Store. Yeah, Michael's is good. I have Grumbacher is, I think, more on the expensive side, but Grumbacher is good. Which I think, I don't know if it's Michael's exclusive, but I used to be a teacher there, so that's what we used to use. So I do know that is good. But I think that's professional paint, not student grade paint. But I don't know. You'll have to look. Hello from Queens, New York. Hello. Yeah, okay, so we have a little less than about 5 minutes until the start of class, so if you have any other questions before we get started, please let me know, and I'm excited to paint with you all. I always love doing these classes. So fun. And patrons, remind me if I forget, because we're supposed to do our art giveaway during this live stream. So I'll, if I remember, I will do that after going over the supplies and like kind of the general announcements, and then we'll do the giveaway, and then we'll start class from there. So remind me if I forget, because I forgot the last like 2 months. Can probably blame that on something else. So you're looking forward to learning about painting. Linda, is this one of your first time? Hello, coming from Iowa. Hello, Jessica. Beamsville, Ontario. Canvas or canvas board? It's preference. It depends on what I'm going to be using it for. So if I'm going to paint it, if I'm going to put it right up on the wall, I will use a canvas, a stretched canvas. It has the frame. It's really easy just to put up on the wall. If I plan to like frame it or something like that, then I would put it in on a canvas board or a canvas pad, and then I can put it in like a frame easier. I won't have to deal with like that. I'll be able to buy a cheaper frame for it. I feel like my canvas is so bouncy. There are ways to tighten up a stretched canvas. I believe, Google it, but I'm pretty sure you can do it by running water, like not running water over it, but like putting water over it, and then when it dries, it'll like tighten it up. Please Google that. I don't know if that's correct, but I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. Sometimes that happens on my practice, not my practice ones, but the ones that I do my other classes on. Sometimes if I don't use it within 4 or 5 times of me using it for those classes, it can get a little stretched out. So let's see. Hi Samantha, I was wondering if you could put up a video explaining what brushes are best for certain types of paintings, like what a liner brush is good for, or filbert, etc. It's kind of a base case-by-case scenario. I mean, liner brushes are good for anything like grass or twigs or anything that you really need a fine line for. Filbert I tend to favor because I feel like they're the most versatile. I can get super thin lines. I can't show you because I don't have my paint out right now, but I can get super thin lines with this, provided my consistency of paint is good, or I can get a fat line. I can also get a curve with this because of the ovalness of the tip. So filberts are my choice for most of the things that I do, and then I also use a big one for the background because I like that it doesn't give as much lines as opposed to a flat brush. When I'm doing the background, I find that it doesn't put as many lines when I'm blending and things like that. So that's why I prefer filberts. I know you probably want more of a bigger genre of explanation, but I can probably I might be able to put out a video. I'm not sure. I've been super bogged down lately. But yeah, we are ready to have some fun. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. Hello, hello, and welcome to our tulip class. I know a lot of you are excited for this. I am too. As I stated before, I apologize for any sounds that are coming from my backyard. We live right next door to a fire station, and they are practicing their firefighter things with the truck and stuff. So I apologize for any sound that you may hear out there. But class is here. I'm excited. We'll probably wait around for just a little bit because I know some people have been getting into the video between like 4 and 4:10. Obviously we won't wait too long for those of you who have already been here and are on time. But I'm excited to get started. So if you have any questions, please let me know. We're going to go over our supplies, the things that I will be using. With all of these supplies, if you don't have the exact thing that I am using, that is totally okay. Use what you have and we'll make it work. Throughout the class, if you have any questions, please let me know. And if I see your question, I will try to answer it as soon as I can. If you are rewatching this, you're watching the replay, I should have timestamps down below. And you can click on that to skip ahead for anything. Let's see. Can you turn up your volume? I did turn it up a little bit. This is where I'm going to be teaching, so this is what I will be. It's kind of here. I can move this for a second while I'm talking. Anyways, maybe I'll just keep it there. I don't know. It's like right next to my canvas, so I don't want to get paint on it. I'll move it back when I'm not talking over here to the camera anymore. But let's see. So we'll go over our brushes, our supplies. I'll have a couple announcements for the next month or so of classes coming up, and then I will be doing a Patreon giveaway. So for anyone who doesn't know, I have a Patreon, and just as a thanks to them, I do like an art giveaway of some supplies, just to say thank you, and so we will be doing that right before class. Yes. Okay, so let's go over supplies. Throughout this, if you have any questions about supplies, specific supplies that I'm using, don't hesitate to ask, and I can answer it during this time. That's when these questions will be helpful. Okay, so brushes that I will be using. I will be using a large filbert. There we go. I'll be using a large filbert brush for most of this painting. I will be using it for the background, for kind of the cloud-like figures in the background, and then I will also be using it for the main shape of the tulips. Now, if you don't have a large filbert, that's okay. You can use a smaller filbert. For the background, I would suggest using a large flat brush, either a 3/4 wash, or a 1-inch brush. And that's totally fine. I used that for years. I tend to like the round corners when I'm doing the background because it tends to have less lines when I'm blending and things. Oh, it's so quiet now. They turned their engine off now. So hopefully you can hear me better. So yeah, I tend to like the filberts for doing the background, but if you don't have one, that's fine. You can just use one of your flat brushes or a bigger brush, whatever you have. And then again, if you don't have the bigger brush for doing the tulips, I would still suggest trying to get a filbert, whatever filbert you have, because that's going to help get the top roundedness of those flowers that we're going to be doing. If you don't have a filbert, my next suggestion would be to use a round brush, because if there's enough paint in it, and it's got enough paint in it, it can still fan out. If you see that, you see how it's still kind of round at the top. It can work. It won't be as effective, but you can still get kind of the roundness, and you'll just have to do each petal within a couple strokes rather than just like the one stroke that I'm going to be doing with the bigger brush. So that is a perk to having a large filbert, but again, if you don't have that, we'll work with what you have. Let's see. And then for the stems and the leaves, we'll probably just be using some of our round brushes. So I have a couple medium to small brushes here. I'm not sure which one I'll use. In the kit, it's a 5 and 6, so they're pretty close together. I'm not sure which one I'll use. I think I used the bigger one last time, and the stems came out a little bit thicker than I wanted to. Tulip stems are fairly thick, so it was fine. It was okay. But the one on the left did come out a little bit thicker. So it's always better to start small, and then if you need to get it thicker, you can just either change your brush or make it thicker. And then lastly, for any of the detail that we're going to be doing, you can either use your filbert brush and turn it sideways and get that really thin, use like the really tip of it to get thin lines, or if you're not comfortable with that and you have a small brush or a liner brush, you can put a lot of details on this with the liner brush. So those are the few brushes that I'm going to be using today. Of course, I have my large flat clear palette. All the supplies that I do use are in the description for affiliate links if you ever want to buy exactly what I have. The main thing with this palette is you do need to wash it as soon as you're done, because once the paint dries, it's really hard to get off. So that is my only, not complaint, but my only thing with this specific palette is you do need to clean it off after you're done. Don't wait till the next day, because soaking doesn't really help. As for the canvas, I'm using an 11 by 14 canvas. Need chat time with messages on. Wait, need chat time with messages on. Explain to show the words. I don't know. We just talked about this during the chat. I don't know how to turn on the captions. I tried to edit the video, like the live stream, to turn on captions, and there wasn't an option to. So I don't know if that's like a back-ended thing that I need to change in my profile or what. So I will definitely look into that for future classes, but I don't stream settings. I don't think, wait, hold on. Closed captions. See, there's not an option. I think because maybe I already started the live video, I can't change it. So I will definitely look into that for future classes. So I apologize for anyone needing the captions. Hi everyone that's just coming in. We're just talking about brushes and supplies. Again, I'm using an 11 by 14 canvas. It's a stretched canvas. That's typically what I use for all my classes, with the exception of my Patron classes. I use a 9 by 12 canvas pad. And then let's go over colors real quick. So colors for this class, you're going to be needing your white, and I have ultramarine blue. You can use the phthalo blue or another blue if you want. I just really liked the this type of blue with the pink. I think that they match really well. Also, I didn't want the sky to blend in with any of the green that I was going to be using, which is why I didn't use a teal, a lighter blue, or a phthalo blue. A phthalo blue is a little bit more greener. So I chose to do more of a cooler color to really stand out from the green. So that's why I chose ultramarine blue and my white. And then I have this really bright green. It is Liquitex brand Basics, and it is light green permanent. So I chose, if you've ever seen Tulips, their stem is so bright. So we can always dull this down or make it darker like we're going to, which I think we're also using black, which I did not get out. Here we go. So we're using, that's what I'm using. If you do not have a very bright green, you can make this. You just have your blue and your yellow, mix it together. Just make sure that you have a lot more yellow than you do blue, and that will make it brighter. It will make it a little bit more of a yellowy green, versus this is kind of a little bit more like a, I don't know, I want to say like a more of a neon green color. But I love having the option to have like a really bright green. So that's what I'm going to be using for that. And then for the pinks, I'm also going to be using black to darken up the green, just for some of the pieces that are a little bit more in the shadow. That's optional, but I highly suggest adding contrast to your paintings because it'll make it a little bit more interesting. And then I have these two pinks. For this painting, I mostly used my magenta, but anytime I wanted it just a tad bit more darker, I did add the rouge. It's just it's a tiny bit more purpley, but I was able to darken it up a little bit, which was helpful. But honestly, you could darken it up with a little bit, like a tiny bit of blue, so you don't need to have that extra pink. And then I have yellow. This is going to be going at the bottom of each of the tulips. So there's that. Questions. How long do you show art painting now? I'm not sure what you mean. How long do you show art? Like how long will I show the painting down here? Well, I'm not sure what you mean. Hello from Quebec and Ohio and New York. Hello. Hi, Linda. Hello, everyone. Which yellow? I am using, it's just like the primary, so it's yellow medium. It's kind of the brighter yellow. We're just going to be doing a little wash, so honestly it doesn't really matter. But I would stay away from like the orangey ones. So try to do a pure yellow, like a permanent yellow one. Sorry, they turned their engines back on. Yeah, and we'll be doing like a wash at the bottom of it. Hello everyone. Ontario, Wisconsin. Hi Carla. Chicago. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about materials? So we have that, and then obviously we have a paper towel, some water for drinking. Highly recommend having like a water bottle with water in it and not a cup with water, because then you're not going to be tempted to drink your water that you've dipped your stuff in it. No, this is not watercolor. This is acrylics. It kind of looks like watercolor. I've had a lot of people ask if it was watercolor. We are kind of using a watercolor technique in the sense of the petals, because they are very thin petals, you can kind of see through them. So we are going to be using a technique where it's very thin paint, and we're going to be layering. So that's probably where you're getting that, why it looks like watercolor. Hi from Dallas. Oh, you're in your 4-year-old? That would be so cute. I have a 3.5-year-old, so my kid would love. Yeah, you can use watercolor. If you are going to be doing watercolor, you will have to not, when we're doing the background, you'll have to not paint where you want the petals, and the green could probably go over the white and the blue, but the pink you'll probably need to not go over it. So I would go ahead and draw out your painting right now and where you want everything, so that you'll be able to do the background and then do each piece like that. Should we whitewash the canvas to start? No, we're gonna be, if you whitewash the canvas right now, some parts of it will probably dry by the time you get to it, and you'll have troubles blending. We're just gonna go piece by piece, and just go for it. So I'll show you how to do it. Okay. I think that's all of the supplies. I do have a couple announcements. Not really announcements. There's just the things that people may not know. I do have a Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, I have an Instagram. This is where you can get all of the knowledge for future classes. Follow me on Facebook. I often post things about future classes and like polls if you want to have influence on what I teach. So there's that. I also have a Patreon for other classes, things like that. And then I also do take tips. So these classes are for free. You do not have to pay for them. But if you would like to generously give something, it does help keep it free, and it also just helps me get better equipment for you. That helps with streaming and everything, and gives more quality classes. So if you would like to tip, all that information is on your right. It's my left. So there's that. And then I just painted our next class that's going to be in April, and I wanted to show you guys before I start class. Ooh, as I hit the camera, this is what we're going to be painting. So for those of you who are mouse friends, fans of the mouse, we are going to be painting a balloon house. So I'm really excited about that. This is really textured. Let me actually put it here. Oh, there's a bug. This is what we're going to be painting. How fun is that? Anyways, so I'm really excited for that. So keep a lookout. I haven't made an event for it. I literally painted it, not last night, but the night before. And I'm really excited for that. Yep, Jana, you're right. But I don't think I'm technically allowed to say that it's, from that. So that's why I call it a balloon house. But I'm really excited because it's just something fun, and I'm not selling anything. But anyways, it's for you guys. It's gonna be fun. So I have that. I think that's all the announcements so far. And then lastly, we have our Patreon giveaway. So let me go ahead and just bring that up real quick. So for my patrons, as stated before, I have a Patreon, which is a place for people to support me, as well as getting gifts and other content like extra classes, quick tips, other things like that. And as a thank you, I give away either you can win either the brush kit that I have, some acrylic paints, or a canvas pad that I use, which I use for all my Patreon classes. So you can use the same supplies as me. So it's just a thank you for all my patrons. So let's go ahead and make this go. And let's make it, I just have a little button that I'm going to click here. And let's go. And it's going. Maybe next month I'll have this shown. And the winner is Meredith Stone. Okay, so Meredith, if you're watching, you have won the giveaway. So congratulations. And I will go ahead and message you, and you can pick one of those items, and then we'll go from there. So thank you so much for being a patron, and let's start class. Somebody is asking, does Mad Yellow work? Mad Yellow or medium yellow? M-E-D or M-A-D? A-D. I said that weird. M-A-D or M-E-D? Medium? I don't know what Mad Yellow is. Just whatever your primary yellow is. So whatever your primary yellow is. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead. I don't know what Mad Yellow is. I can look it up real quick. So go ahead and get your paints out. It looks like that's pretty. I think that's fine. Yeah, I just looked up the color. It looks fine. Honestly, any yellow you have, it's gonna be a wash, so it's gonna be really thinned out. So it doesn't matter too much. I would just stay away from the more orangey colors, but other than that, you should be fine. Okay, so the main colors right now, so we're gonna go ahead and start. We're gonna get out our white and our blue. Most of the background is white, but we still have to paint it white, so it's not raw canvas. I shouldn't say raw canvas because most of these are primed with like a gesso or like a white. Let's see, I'm gonna move you guys. When I say you guys, I mean my mic. I'm gonna move you back over here so that I'm not gonna get paint on you when I'm painting, because that would be sad. For anyone wondering, I am using the Blue Yeti, which is a mic, and I really enjoy it. I really like it. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you are going to get your brush, whatever brush you're using. You can do a filbert brush, which is what I'm going to be doing. It's SAArtist in the kit. It's the number 15. But honestly, disregard any number that I give you for a size of brush if it's not the same exact kit that I have, because there's not an industry standard. There's not an industry standard for brush sizes. So just whatever large filbert or flat brush that you have. So I'm just going to start by grabbing some of this white and just, it's pretty, you can use a good amount of water, that's fine. We're kind of just washing this part of it, and then you're just going to add some of this blue anywhere where you want. You can blend it into that white. And we will come back with our white to add those kind of cloud shapes. So don't worry if you have too much blue. I am using very little bits of blue. So like here, there is a good amount of blue, so I'm just gonna go around it with the white, blending it in, getting a little bit more water. And for the most part, I'm going in the same direction. So I'm going from the bottom left corner to the top right corner. And I'm just continuing that all the way through the canvas. That's the direction I'm going, but I'm going from the top left to the bottom right in terms of actually like the movement of my hand versus like the flow of my brush. So having this all kind of wet with the initial wash of that white helps in the blending process and kind of keeping it wet. And honestly, it really is just the background. So if you're like, oh, it's not blending, you know, the way that I want it, that's okay. Again, this is the first layer. We are going to add a little bit more of like that cloudy feel to it. And the background, it's honestly just that. It's the background. It's not the focal point. A lot of these flowers, sorry, a lot of these flowers are going to be covering it, so, which is probably why in the bottom like section of it, it's just mostly white. I'm gonna add a little bit of blue. Let me just blend that in. You can choose where to have like a little bit more blue peek through. Little trick for blending. Whenever you're blending two colors together, for instance, this blue right here, I wanted it to stay more blue, but I knew that if I use my full-on like pressure on my brush, that the white on my brush would take over. So I just blended the outsides with like the very tip of my brush, and I was able to blend that in without overtaking the blue that I had already put on the canvas. So something to keep in mind is that whenever you're using a brush, you don't have to use 100% pressure 100% of the time. You can use different pressures of your brush to create different effects, including when you're blending. If any of you have any questions throughout the class, please, please, please make sure to let me know. I'm here for you guys. I'm here to inspire creativity, and if you have a question about what we're doing, we're live. I can answer your questions. So just pop in a comment, obviously unless you're rewatching this. But you can still pop in a comment and maybe I'll get to it by the time you're done. But yeah, let me know. Make sure I know if you have a question. So for instance, I know that I want a little bit more blue over here. So because this is all wet, I can just take some of my blue, and I know that this is going to be dulled down because of the white that's already on here. So I'm just going to go back and forth. A little bit of pressure, a little less pressure. Long strokes. The more strokes that I do, the more it's going to blend. So at some point, when you get to how light or dark you want it, you gotta just stop. You gotta just stop and not paint anymore, and just let it dry or whatever. Alright, so there's my little sky. I don't need to wait for this to... is this pre-recorded? No, this is not pre-recorded. If somebody's watching the recording of this after this class, then it will be pre-recorded for them. But for you, it is not pre-recorded. We are live right now. So I don't need to wait until this is fully dry for me to start on the clouds. And what you're going to do is you're going to take some of your white and you're just going to kind of move in some circles. You don't want to cover up all of the beautiful sky that we put in, but we do want to create some clouds. So I'm going to use the natural white that we already have in here and just create some cloud textures around that. I'm just going in little bits, little circles. You can have a little bit of water on your brush, but I would try to stay away from too much water. Because at this point you don't want to take off the paint that you've put on there. Especially since it isn't really dry all the way. And you can already see that all the clouds are starting to just appear out of nowhere. And this is where the filbert comes in handy. So if you were using a, I should have said this before, if you're using a flat brush, you can either use the side of it and do a bunch of kind of like scoops, or you can switch to your smaller filbert and use that if you have a smaller filbert. What's a filbert? A filbert is a flat brush that is, you can't really see it because it's got white on it. It's a flat brush that has a round top. See how, so this is a flat brush. It's probably, this one is probably 1/2 inch, but the top of it is oval. So it has a really nice, like, I can just place this down and it will have a round effect to it. So it's ideal for doing cloud shapes and anything like that. Don't forget to add pure white clouds to your quote-unquote white sections, because as you can see, this part all looked white, but when you add the pure white onto it, you can now see more clouds. Because it wasn't actually white, it had like a tint of blue in the background, so you can get a little bit more depth. So now you see my background and it has a beautiful cloudy sky behind it. Really easy, super simple. At least hopefully it is. Let me know if it's easy for you or if you're struggling, and maybe how I can help if you are struggling. Maybe I can expand or explain something a little bit further. But we do kind of want to wait for this part to dry a little bit before we move on. Apologize for anyone who doesn't like cracking back. I'm just going to and then don't forget to rinse out your brush when you are finished. Super important. Super important. Can we go back and watch this and paint how? Yes, you can. So I think you can actually scroll back right now because it's on YouTube. So correct me if I'm wrong. But if you're not out, if you can't do that, then you can just wait until we're done. We'll probably be done around. These classes usually take anywhere from an hour to an hour, an hour and a half to 2 hours. So we'll be done anytime between 5:30 and 6. Usually it's around 6. And then you can come back to this same link. It'll stay up on my YouTube forever because it's a free class, and you can paint it then. Okay? Yeah. So if you can't paint it right now, that's totally fine. You can always come back to it. And we do this for for all of the other classes too. So if you are painting live and you are ready to move on, you're done with your background, just give me a thumbs up or say I'm done or something to let me know that you're done with that portion. Since we're not, in person, and I can't see where you're at. So if you are done, let me know, and we can move forward. For everyone who is waiting though, because I do wanna make sure that like the majority of you are done before moving on. For those of you waiting, let me know if you're painting with someone either in your house, or if you're painting someone like via Zoom or Facebook or anything like that. Someone essentially not in your house, if you're painting with them, because that's always a fun thing to do and to yeah. So let's see. Okay, so we have a couple done. I'm gonna wait for a few more, because we do kind of want to wait until this is dry anyway. So we're gonna be going over kind of the next section. So if you do not have a pink, you can make a pink with red and white and maybe like a tiny bit of purple or blue, just so it's not on the orangey side. Okay, I have a couple more people saying they're done. Painting with a friend via Zoom. Yay! That's always fun. Okay. Here with my husband and 7-year-old daughter. Are you painting with your husband and 7-year-old daughter? Because not a lot of husbands paint. I find it sad, but that's so exciting if that is the case. Done. Okay, so I have a lot of dones. Okay, that's great. So let's go ahead and at least go over while other people finish their background. We're gonna go over kind of what we're gonna do. So for this, we are going to paint in the base of our flowers, and then we're going to add layers and details on top of that. So for this, we're going to get out our pink. Again, I'm just mainly using magenta, so it's just this really light pink. I get out my pink, and a lot of this is going to be fairly thin. And the pink that I have, keep in mind, the pink that I have is somewhat translucent. So if your pink isn't necessarily translucent, you might need to add like a tad bit more water. But that'll be up to you to kind of decipher, because I'm not with you, and I can't really give you advice based on what I see. But if it's too dark, and you can't really see through the canvas, so just like the slightest bit, you might need to just make it a little bit more translucent. So I'm gonna do one flower so you guys can visualize and see what the process is, and then you can paint after that. Okay, so for this, I do want you, can you use pale purple? Yeah, you honestly, you can use whatever color you want. For purple, I would maybe make it a little bit darker, maybe, only because purple is really close to blue, and you don't want it to blend in too much with the blue. The pink really stands out from the blue, and purple is closer to blue on the color wheel and might not stand out as much, so you might need to make it maybe a little bit darker, which you can do by either adding blue or black depending on the purple. You don't want to make it gray, but or maybe add some red to it so it's a little bit less purple. I don't know. Honestly, you can use whatever colors you want, but that's just my suggestion because purple is a lot closer to blue. Okay, so go ahead and watch me real quick. I'm grabbing some of my pink, and a tad bit of water. And I'm just, again, my pink is already a little bit translucent, so I might not have to add too much water to this. So for each of these, we will decide what petal is in front of which during the second stage. For right now, we're just getting the base, like the base shape of the flowers, not necessarily which petal is behind what, okay? So for this, I'm gonna start up a little bit above half, and again, just watch me real quick. Just watch first, and I'm gonna show you the process first. So for the middle flower, you're going to do 2 strokes. 1, 2. Now I can tell that I need a little bit more white and a little bit more water, because I can still see, like, I don't know if you can see this. I can see like the texture of the canvas. Okay, there we go. That looks better. And then on the outside, so there's kind of like this little dip here. So use 2 strokes for the middle flower, and I think I'm gonna make those bigger, because I do want that base one to be on the bigger side. So it's gonna be like, I don't know, this big. So figure out how big you want your tulip. Okay, so there's that. Again, this is just the first stage, so. And then for the 2 sides, you're going to go a little bit further out. You want this little like V here. And you're going to go to each side, overlapping. So after I did that, like the outer edge of it, I came back in and kind of went over. Does that make sense? Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So essentially it's 2 strokes for the middle, and then 1 stroke each for each of the sides. Now I'm going to kind of adjust a little bit, because I do want this to be a little bit taller. Just a little bit. And I'm just doing that by adjusting the outer edge and bringing it down. And at the very bottom, you're just going to add a little bit of white and kind of blend it up a little bit, just so it's a tad bit lighter. That's it. And that's pretty much how you're going to do every single one. Now, let me go ahead and go over, if you do not have a big, brush. If you don't have a big brush and you just have the small one, you'll just have to do it in more brush strokes. So I'm going to do the same thing. I have my white, or like my pink, a little bit of white just to kind of make it a little bit paler. A little bit of water. And I'm gonna do, I'll do the one right next to it. Okay, so you're just going to figure out where you want it to go to. And I'm gonna do the first. So for each, like, what would be one stroke for the larger petal is gonna be about 3 strokes. So it's definitely still doable. You just have to be a little bit more intentional with your strokes because you have more of them. It's not as like kind of whimsical. And then you're just going to, I'm kind of going to go around that. And then the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to grab some white and blend it into the pink. We'll add more white as we go to make it brighter, but it's just kind of to start the process of that. And yeah, that's pretty much all you gotta do. Hi Osmary, no worries. Do your patron classes stay forever? They stay forever as long as you're a patron. So if you become a patron right now, you will have access to all the classes that I've ever taught in Patreon, including the hummingbird that I put out, the dolphins that I just recently did. There's a poll for what I'm going to teach this current Friday for next week. So if you want to have access to that, they get to choose what we want to paint. And because it's a close-knit community, you have more of an opportunity to choose what to paint. So once you become a Patreon or a patron, I think at least at the magenta tier, you'll have access to all the classes that I've ever taught. And then as long as you're a patron, you'll have access to that. But if you decide to not be a patron anymore, then you won't have access to those videos. So does that make sense? Does that answer your question? So they stay forever in my Patreon. So as long as you're a patron, you have access to those classes and those tips and the polls and everything like that. But there's like constant updating and like current stuff that I'm putting out. So as long as you're a patron, you'll get access to those things, and have a say in what I paint for you all. If you are part of my artist community and you ever see people posting pictures of their work from something that wasn't a live class, it was probably a Patreon class. And you can actually go into the album section of that community, of the SamanthaAndersonArtist community, the album section, and you can actually see all of the classes that I've done either live or on Patreon. It's all in those folders. And at the top it'll say whether or not it was a Patreon class. So if you see classes that you want to take that are in my Patreon, you can always become a patron, do that class, and then you can either stay for future classes or you don't have to be a patron anymore. But it's just a way to support. I know a lot of people here will tip like $5, $10, $15, but won't be a patron or won't be a patron, and that's totally their choice. Or you could very easily become a patron for that amount of money. It is a per month thing, but you can cancel at any time. I hope that answers your question. I think I want this one bigger. This one I want like to here. Okay, so this is probably the biggest one. when I say biggest, it just means that it's the closest one to like the camera, essentially. And you can do more than just like the the 3-petal system. So on this one, it's open a little bit more, so you can see a petal that's like kind of peeking out over here. Or this one that's going to be right here is a little bit more closed, so you can't really see all the petals. It's kind of just one big kind of blob. So you can kind of create, it doesn't have to look exactly like this. By no means does it need to look like this. You can change or add more, or whatever you want. Okay? No need to copycat. But obviously, if you want to paint exactly what I'm painting, that's fine too. That's totally fine. That is what I'm teaching, after all. I just want to inspire everyone to, if you want to do something different, it's okay. You're allowed to paint something a little bit different than what I'm teaching. I'm sure the 4-year-old is going to paint a very different scene, and he or she is going to love it, and that's fine. I will love it. I want to see a picture because my heart's going to melt, because I also have a almost 4-year-old. Let's see. Yeah, if you're not a part of our artist community, definitely check it out. It's a lot of fun having like a community that's like all kind of painting the same things, and we're able to like encourage each other in it, and it's a lot of fun. And I think one of my favorite parts is that at the end of class, when everybody's posting their artwork, everyone's painting always looks like so different from each other's. Like they all have their own like amazing elements, and like there's even some that like, oh man, I'm like, oh, I like that one so much more than mine, or like you'll choose to do something different than me, and it's like, that is a great choice. I wish I would have thought of that. But yeah, it's so much fun. Highly recommend it. If anything, it's a place for you to just be encouraged by other artists. Let's see. It's like one right here. This tulip is like really close, so I can really like see it all. If you have a stretch canvas, don't forget to paint the bottom, sides, and tops, because then you'll be able to just put it right on the canvas, or right on the wall when you're done. Or give it to a friend, and they won't have to worry about framing it. But as you can see, I do this every time. I forgot to paint this side. I painted the other sides. Oh, it's the worst. That's okay. I'll just rinse out my brush and paint the side. nice thing about it is that it's a pretty simple background with only 2 colors. So there's not much to like match really. There you go. See? A little better. One more to do because there is quite the void here, so I'm going to put that in, and I'm going to, I like this one to be lower, fill in that space. Alright. Alright, as always, let me know when you are kind of finished with this part of the class, with kind of this section, and we'll go from there. Okay? And again, if you have any questions, just let me know and I can answer those in the limbo of kind of waiting for people. Finished, except my clouds didn't come out very well. I'm sure they're fine. I think my clouds came out better than the first time that I did it. So, my 4-year-old daughter is enjoying. I'm glad. What was I gonna do? I was gonna do something, and then I forgot. I forgot what I was gonna do. Done with that part. Okay. I almost wish this one, I think I might go back and make this one a little bit bigger. I might mess it up if I do that. Never mind. I'm not gonna do it. So for those of you wondering, usually if I don't necessarily like something, or I want to change something, I'm totally down for just going and changing it. Except for how we're doing the layers, is that the layers are very thin. So if I were to try to like reshape this one, which is kind of what I wanted to do, I wanted to make it a little bit bigger. If I were to try to reshape it, it would put like an extra layer on it, and it would like make it look funny. So I'm just going to accept and like the way that it looks for now. And these are different paintings. I can't accentuate this enough. Like, even for me as an artist, painting the same thing twice, like, I'm going to make different decisions that are going to affect the painting in a different way. So like, that's okay. So like, even me who painted this the first time, it's going to look different. So that much more, yours is going to look different than mine, and that's okay. Embrace it, be okay with it. Heck, I've even done some paintings where like a few of your paintings have been better than mine, and I'm like, why am I teaching the class? Why aren't you teaching the class? Because everybody's at a different stage, and everybody, you know, has different experiences and chooses things differently. So all that to say, I'm not going to change my painting. Yeah, if you're enjoying the class, make sure to, I don't know, give it a like, subscribe. I think I only have like 30% of people who actually watch these classes are actually subscribed. You'll get reminders of when I go live if you're subscribed. And then I also put out speed paintings of my Patreon classes and all sorts of stuff. So if you're ever wondering what's going on in our Patreon. And then I used to do studio vlogs. I promise I will start doing studio vlogs again. I'm just kind of in a space where, I should say a time when I'm unavailable to do that. But I will be starting that up probably the next couple weeks. I just have a couple announcements that I have to make before I start doing studio vlogs again. So yeah, okay. Seems like people are done with that. My tulip paint is kind of thick. That's okay. We will be adding more layers and kind of darkening different bits to make it look more like a tulip flower. So if your first layer was thick and just pink, maybe you could make maybe a slightly darker color that will have kind of the same effect on it. That would probably be helpful, or would work. Okay. Alrighty. I'm gonna fix my clouds now that they're dry. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the clouds you could definitely fix, but I cannot fix my flower because of how we did it. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of done, so let's go ahead and move on. Hopefully anybody that is behind can either catch up or just kind of listen while painting the part that they're painting. Let's see. We're gonna go ahead and okay, so for this next part, you'll probably want to go to a smaller filbert a smaller filbert brush, and we'll go from there. So essentially what we're trying to create with this second layer is that we're trying to create every part where the flowers are overlapping. So if I have these two petals, right? I have these two petals here. I'll do it over here. I have these two petals. Let's say the middle one and the one on the right. They're overlapping right here. So there's this little section right here where they're overlapping. That's the section that you want to make darker. I'll show you with this original one. Sorry, my nose like itches all of a sudden. So you're gonna get just your pure pink, maybe not with the white in it. And you're going to, wherever so that's like the edge of this one. Now we're gonna kind of draw a line with the edge of this petal, and then you're gonna fill that in. Eventually you can do this just in one stroke and you'll just kind of know where they are. You see that? And you're going to just kind of create another layer. and all of a sudden these petals look like they're crossing over. Now we are going to be adding a little bit more like detail to each of these flowers, but that's just kind of, that's the gist of it. Now they don't have to come fully to a close here. The first time I did it, it didn't. I think it just kind of depends on where you want your petals to end up, and the shape of your petals. What color am I? I'm just using my straight pink. So before I was using a pink with a little bit of white and a little bit of water. Now I'm not really using any water, and I'm just using my pink. Like, you can use a tiny bit of water just to make it flow better, but I'm not using any white to dull it down. So I'm just doing that on all of them. I'm drawing a little bit of a line from where these two touch. Now here I kind of messed up and I did the whole thing versus where they just touch. So I kind of had to make that darker, but that's fine. Because we're going to be adding more details on it. And then I'm just filling in that space. And for the parts, so this is the part where you get to choose whether or not the front one, like whether or not the middle one is behind or in front. If it is behind, then you can darken like the rest of this. So like for instance, I'm just kind of like that. And kind of blend it into that thing, whatchamacallit. I am gonna see if I can try to, oops. Kind of want this to come a little bit lower and open up a little bit more. Okay. So let's say this one is behind these two petals, so I darkened the rest of the petal. This one I want to have on the outside, which means I'm going to be darkening and kind of blending in this side of that section. It's okay if there's still that line there because there still is that overlap, so there's still going to naturally be a little bit darker depending on where your light source is coming from. So it's okay if you don't get it perfectly blended, that's okay. But this is the, let's see. Now most of this is darker because this one's kind of all together. It's gonna darken. Now for tulips, most of the time they'll have little like highlight and like kind of white markings on the tips of their petals as well as the very bottom. So you can kind of get crazy and really choose your own adventure on this. If you want to have a little bit more white, or if you want them to have a little bit more color, it's really up to you. But we'll be coming back in and just kind of giving the texture of a tulip. So tulips naturally have this like streakiness to it. So as you're moving along, and I'll kind of give you some tips. Let's say I want to do some detail on this one, okay? Now, the detail I would be doing would be the back end of a tulip petal is kind of darker in the center, and then it has two little kind of white strips. I don't really know what else to call it. I'm just going to kind of blend that in a little bit. So I have a little line. I'm going to grab the tiniest bit of white and mix it with, you know, blend it with whatever's on my brush, and I'm going to start lightening up. I'll grab a little bit more white. I'm going to start lightening up the two sides of like the line that I just made. You see that? It gives a little bit of detail. So you can do that with all of your tulips that are the petals that are kind of facing you, or maybe facing like this one. When I originally done it, it was facing a little bit more towards me, so I ended up giving it like kind of like the side view of one of them. And you don't have to have all of these details on every single petal. As long as you have them on the ones that are really like close, like maybe these three, and the other ones you can just give like elements of that to suggest that it's, you know, that detail on all of them. Or you can go crazy and you can really get really detailed and do it with all of them. That's totally fine. But just for the sake of a 2-hour class, I'm not going to be doing that. But you totally can. But anyway, so you're going to be giving that type of detail to all of the ones that you can, and then you can always add just a dry brush. I have a dry brush, there's not any water. I can lighten up the tips of all these of any of these petals that I want. I don't have to do it with all of them. I would suggest not doing it with all of them, because not all tulip flowers have like white tipped, you know, petals. And then now would be the time to add a little bit more of that white to the bottom of your flowers. Try to pay attention to which petal is in front, so that you can, like, I don't know, give more detail to specific parts of it if you want. Can always come back over a little bit and put back in your a little bit of that pink. Part of this painting is fairly repetitive because, you know, you're doing the same thing but with, like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 tulips to do it on. So if you have any questions throughout this portion, just let me know. But from here on out, unless I have something specific to share, I probably won't be talking much just because I don't want to talk your ears off about something random or nothing if I don't have anything to share. So just let me know if you have any questions. And we're just going to paint together. Oh, I will say that if at this point, since you have your layers down, now you can start adding highlights and lowlights using a specific technique. So because tulips have like this sort of, what I was saying before is tulip petals have this sort of like up and down kind of stringy look within their petal. So whenever you're adding some darkness or anything like that, add it in lines, in little lines versus strokes. So what I mean, instead of using the flat part of the brush, use the thin part of the brush, and you'll slowly be adding on that like texture that you'll be adding through your highlights and lowlights without even trying. And it's like a step that you won't have to do later. So you'll see that I'm turning my brush to the side, so it's not flat like this, but it's vertical, so up and down. And I'm using that to add my darkness. And you do that over here too. So I'm also, I'm adding some white to the top of this one. I can also add little streaks of white to emphasize that texture. Say I'll add like some white here. And you can also do the same thing with the texture going upwards from the bottom. I would say to have like your white or whatever color you're using with just a touch of water. Not too much, you don't want it to be too liquidy, but just enough to get those thin lines. And if you're not comfortable using something like this, you can always switch over to a liner brush to do something like this. Oops. Sorry, I just bumped my mic. How are we doing? Does anybody need any help? Is anybody having troubles with any of the techniques that we're doing? how do we get the paint off of our brushes? If you're using watercolor or acrylics, you're just gonna rinse it in a cup of water. So that's what I have. I have a little cup that I reuse, and I just rinse it in my water. That's okay. We're adding a lot of layers, so you can honestly keep adding layers until it's something that you like. If something looks off, I would suggest having a little bit more contrast. So for instance, I do have some highlights and lowlights, but it'll look better if I have a darker edge and I can see that better. Do you see how now it pops out? So if I did that to the other side, it would do the same thing. Or maybe the sun is coming from the top right, and so everything on this side is going to be a little bit darker. And notice how I'm adding my dark in those lines that I was creating. So I'm just gonna barely add it on this side. So this is my darker pink that I'm kind of coming in with. And I'm adding just a little bit of darkness to it. I'm also going to add it just the tiniest bit on this little petal back here so that we can tell the difference between the ones in front and the ones in back. I mean, even when I rinse the paint, it doesn't go back to white. Do you have a white, like a white brush, like white bristles? That's normal. That's definitely normal. It probably won't go back to white unless using soap and water. And even then, I've had, at least with my face painting brushes, I don't have any white brushes at this point. But some colors will kind of stay in. They'll just kind of stain the white bristles, and sometimes after it they'll be blue, and then you'll paint with red, and then they might be a little bit more pink. Like white bristles, unless using a, like, I don't know if they ever go back to like pure white, but I wouldn't worry about it right now. And then just when you're done, just make sure to wash it with soap and water. You can use hand soap. I usually use dish soap because it tends to cut through more things. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But you can buy like specific brush cleaner. I don't. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it right now. This is my first painting. Yeah. Then when you first start out with brushes, I don't think they ever really go back to their original color. Like even my brown ones kind of get stained. But even if they're clean, like they're clean, but they're just stained. Somebody's having fun on the street next to us. Okay, so what I was saying before is if you still feel like you're in the ugly stage and things aren't kind of popping out, check your contrast. Check, like, do your highlights and your lights need to be a little bit whiter? Do your darks need to be a little bit darker? Start going a little bit a little bit more in terms of your colors and your popping. I know sometimes when I'm painting like super close to my painting all the time, it can look fine, but then when I step back or see it on the screen, I'm like, oh, it's actually like either, oh, it looks better than I anticipated, or it's like, oh, I think I need to make this darker, or this better, or this, you know, highlighted more, or whatever. So I could see, like, in person, I'm looking at this and it's like, it looks really dark, but when I take a step back or look at the screen, which is like me stepping back because it's like I get a further view, I definitely like that one better. So pardon me. So try to up the contrast on your painting and the different parts of your petals. Contrasting is a lot harder for the purple. Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit of what I was talking about in the beginning. Especially if you're using a pale purple that's already on the lighter side. I would definitely try to mix some blue in or some red. I hesitate saying black just because I know it's gonna dull the color. Because you have pale blue. If you have pale purple, it means that it's already got white in it, and if you add black to that, black and white make gray. So it'll be grayed out. If you have a darker purple, then maybe use that for contrast. And if you don't have a dark purple, I would suggest mixing some red and blue together, and then you can use that as your dark. I would just say don't do black because it's gonna really dull out your colors. Again, just a reminder, when I'm adding my darks, I'm not just putting on a flat color. I'm adding these colors in this kind of like stripy motion. And honestly, you don't have to do this. I just find that it creates texture of like what a tulip would actually be. Yes, the leaves will make it pop, but that is the second part of this, which we do need to start because we only have about 20 minutes left. So yeah, let's actually, I have a little bit more detail on this one real quick that I'm just gonna speed through real fast. Going over what I already painted to stripe the petals is actually erasing the color. It probably means that whatever you're going over isn't dry, and you might need to wait a little bit. If you do things too quickly, and you don't allow time for it to dry, then it can it can start taking the color off. How do you put in the stripes? I am using my filbert, turning it vertically, and I'm just very gently going over it. This one I'm doing kind of fast, but it gets the job done. I'm gonna go back over with some white. Also, Joe, I'm not using water. When I'm going back over with the stripes, I'm pretty much using a dry brush. So sometimes if you have too much water on your brush and you're going back over something you already painted, sometimes that can reactivate, especially if it's something that you recently painted, it can reactivate that paint, and then that's why it's taking it off. So if you are having troubles with that, I would suggest maybe making sure that you have a dry brush, which is essentially just rinse out your brush, dry it off, and grab only paint and no water. So for instance, Jessica, I want to make this part a little bit darker, right? Kind of where they overlap. Instead of just putting in all the color, I'm going to slowly add the color in stripes. And that'll give it that same texture and the darkness that I want at the same time. And I'm just going to add a little bit of darkness to the rest of this petal. Like that. I do need to go in with some white though. And I covered up my little white spot here. Okay, so that's pretty much it on those. You can always come back and add as much detail to that as you want. I do want to get going on the rest of it because we only have about 15 more minutes and I don't want to like speed through it all. So let's go ahead. We are going to do a quick wash of our yellow. So let's get that out real quick. Which again, a wash is just a very, very light, and when I say light, I mean little to no paint. of whatever you're doing. Now, I had a little bit too much paint, so that came out pretty yellow. But you're just going to add just the tiniest bit of yellow and a couple different strokes to the bottom of your tulips. This one came out a little bit too yellow, so I'm going to attempt to make amends. Or maybe it's just a yellower tulip. That's fine. Alright, so this next bit you're going to do in 2 coats. So we have our green. So get out whatever green that you're using. I'm using the bright green that I have, the light green permanent. And I'm going to grab my medium to small round brush. And I'm going to place in all my stems first, okay? Again, just like when we did the tulips, you put down where you want everything, and then you start adding detail, and you can push certain things back. In this case, we pushed our petals back or forward. We're going to do the same thing with our leaves, and we're going to push things either forward or back. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just place all of our stems. We're going to add in our leaves where we want them. This is also where you get to cover up any mistakes that you did. So for instance, I don't know if you can see this, but at one point I made a mistake and I kind of came outside that line, and I didn't see until later, so I couldn't like fix it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to my advantage. Thankfully, it was already on a piece that the kind of green trailed up the side anyways. So I'm just going to eventually just cover that part up. So let's say it was a piece over here that I messed up. This is where you get to add those leaves and cover up any mistakes that you might have made or whatever. Or let's say like I didn't like how yellow this was and I just didn't like it at all. I could add a leaf coming from over here, just covering that whole section up. So this is a part where you get to make an artistic decision on where you put your leaves. Obviously the stems have to come through the bottom of the flowers, but the leaves can kind of, you know, they have a little bit more flexibility. So I'm going to take just, I'm going to get my brush wet, but then dab it on. It doesn't need to be super wet. And just grab my green. And I'm just going to place, I'm going to place my stems anywhere where I have where I can see the bottom of a flower. And try to make them smaller than you think they're going to be, so that if they're too small, you can make it bigger. Because if it's too big, you can't really make it smaller. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility. And then at the very top, see, it looks a little bit too small, right? I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. And then at the very top, it kind of flares out just the tiniest bit. Okay? So it's kind of gonna flare out just the tiniest bit. Anywhere where you are going over another flower, you are going to add just the tiniest bit of white to make it more opaque for this first layer. So I just added the tiniest bit of white so that it made it a little bit more opaque and it covered up that part of the flower. We'll do this with the leaf that kind of comes over, and I'll show you a little bit more. But right now, No worries, no worries. Have a great night. You can always come back to this class and finish your painting. So I don't necessarily have to put a stem right here because I have some other leaves that are coming from the other side. So I'm just going to put in my leaf that's over here. Now this one goes behind it, so I'm just going to be careful to put in the leaf and that goes around it. For anyone who is leaving or coming back to the class, we are almost done. So if you want to wait like 20 minutes, you'll be able to just actually, I mean, I'm pretty sure you can rewind, but you'll be able to go back and just pick up from where you started. Okay. So there is a leaf that's coming over from the bottom. It starts about over here and it comes to about here. So I'm saying here unless you're like watching me. You have no idea what I'm saying. You're welcome. Thank you for everyone who's stayed this long. You can always come back and finish your painting. Don't forget to take a picture and post it in the artist community. If you would like to tip, all that information is on the screen right now, but obviously it is optional. Please don't feel obligated, but it does help. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't forget to sign your painting. But yeah, for anyone who's still here, I'm not leaving. I'm just saying goodbye to those who are. Alright, so for instance, because my green is fairly see-through, see how you can see that darkness? Now theoretically that's fine because I'm going to make it darker anyways, but for in terms of just the technique, you just, for this first layer, you just add a tiny bit of white and you streak it just kind of like we streaked the flower. When we add our second coat, we're going to be doing the same thing because leaves naturally have that streakiness as it grows. So we're going to be continuing that. And there's another one right here. Now obviously you do not have to follow this exact template. If you want to put your leaves in other places, that is totally fine. You don't have to do the same positions that I'm doing. Now this one, this stem is kind of come into a curve. I'm going to add just the tiniest bit of white right here because it is going over this one. And then I'm going to add another one behind here that's peeking out from this, behind this flower. I think the trick here is just to make sure that you have leaves coming kind of, one, in all directions, but two, don't make them all go the same direction. Like some are going to the right, some are going to the left. And that's kind of just part of it, and I think it adds a lot to it. Add a little bit of white right here. How do I come up with painting ideas? I get inspired from a lot of places. Sometimes I just have the idea and I put it on a piece of paper, change it around a bit, and then come up with, a painting. Kind of like what I did with both my balloon house painting, as well as the dolphins. Those are just ideas that I had in my head and I wanted to create. Other ones like this one here, I knew that I wanted to do tulips, so I looked up royalty-free photos of tulips, and this one stood out the most to me. And I changed it a little bit, but for the most part I was really inspired by the original, so I didn't change it much. So if you're ever wanting to paint but you don't know what to paint, and you want it to be something that like maybe you come up with, I would suggest looking at royalty-free images and seeing if you feel inspired from anything like that. Okay, so here's the part where you get to kind of figure out if anything's missing, if you feel like there's any gaps. I think that this one should be bigger, so I'm going to do just that. And make it bigger. And I can tell that this would actually show on the other side because of the angle, and the placement. So I'm going to just do this just to make sure that it follows all the way through. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I'm just going to cover that up. How do you know if something is royalty-free? Just look it up. If it's not from a royalty-free website like Pexels or Pixabay or Unsplash, I would just assume that it is not royalty-free. But if you're not selling your work, then technically it doesn't need to be royalty-free. So I actually had my mother-in-law ask the question, because she found some photos on Facebook that somebody else had posted that she was really inspired by, and I was like, yeah, you can totally paint that, just don't try to sell your work, because that's not your painting, it's not your original idea, it's somebody else's work. So recently I was really inspired by a painting, or not by a painting, by a photo of an aurora borealis, northern lights, by a photographer on Facebook. This is the painting that I did from it, but I specifically asked him, I said, hey, would you mind if I paint and teach a class from this work? Like, I don't charge for it. I accept tips, but it's not something like I don't charge for my classes. It's a free painting class, and I asked permission to paint it. Now, theoretically, I think I would probably still, if I wanted to sell it, I'd probably still want to ask if I needed, like, ask if I could sell it. And I might still give, you know, credit to the original photographer. But it's just about asking. Yeah. So if something's online, assume that it's copyrighted. Okay, is this? Okay, so this is drying. We can go ahead and do our second coat. This is where you're gonna need just a tad bit of black. So you're gonna be using black, green, and yellow to add this. Oops, that didn't even come out. To add a little bit more dimension to this, and this is going to be the last step. So I'm sorry that we're going over, but there's been a lot of really good questions. So essentially, figure out where your light source is. I kind of pictured my light source being on the top right. So with that in mind, figure out where everything is. So you have to figure out if your stem or your leaf is in front of each other or behind, and then figure out if it's going to be in the shadow or if it's in the sunlight. If it's in the sunlight, it's going to be a little bit lighter. You might add some yellow to it to make it brighter, and then if it's in the dark, it's going to be a little bit darker. So for instance, I'm going to add kind of a lighter green. I added a little bit of yellow to this. And now I'm going to go back in. So I keep bumping it's in not the spot I'm used to it. I'm going to go back in with my green and a little bit of black, and it's going to make just a little bit of a darker green. I'm going to go ahead and add just the tiny bit of blue to this, just so it's not grayed out as much. Okay, so I kind of have a makeshift dark green, and I'm just going to, first I'm going to add a little bit of darkness to the top here, because that is definitely going to be in the shade. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of that darkness on one side. And I'm going to add it on this side. And again, I'm going to be adding, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. But I'm going to, whenever I'm adding a color, I'm not just straight adding that color. I'm going to be adding it in those little markings, so that it gives the illusion, one, that there's a lot of detail on these, but two, so that it gives that illusion of how plants really are and how they grow. So maybe this part is in the shadow. And then as we trail down, it's going to be in the light more. So you kind of get to choose your own path. So I'm using a mixture of my green, my black, a little bit of blue, my yellow, and I'm just going to do that all the way across. When you get to a part that you need to paint something either forward or back, paint the one that's furthest back first, and then you can paint the one in front of it after. So for me, I am almost done. So let me know if you have any other questions. But for the most part, we're pretty much done. So I just want to thank everyone for being here and painting with me. Make sure that if you haven't already, you go into your Facebook, be a part of our community. It's open to anyone. And it's just a lot of fun. The more people are in there, the more fun it is. But yeah. I had too much black here. I'm just kind of fixing that. But yeah, I hope you guys all enjoy the class. Definitely post your pictures in there. If you want more instruction, you can always become a patron. Tips are always welcome, but don't feel pressured. And that's pretty much the end of class. I'm gonna go ahead and sign it. Let's see, where should I sign it? Last time I signed it on the left, but I really like this. I really like this one, so I'm gonna sign it on the right this time. So let's do that. I'm gonna sign it in white. And a little tip for signing: whenever you're using a round brush, if you roll the brush as you're taking it off of the palette, that will help kind of wrap together all of the loose bristles, and you'll be able to get a better signature. Or just use a smaller brush. You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. All right, I gotta go because it is dinner time where I'm at. Kids gotta get out of bed. We usually have them take late naps during class, but it sounds like they're awake anyway. So yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for painting with me. And yeah, have a great night. Bye everyone.